Welcome to Chartloop's growth series. Joining us today is Guillaume Cabane, also known as G, also known as the crazy scientist, founder of HyperGrowth Partners, VP of growth of several very hot Silicon Valley startups, to name a few. Segment, Drift, Gorgeous. I'm going to actually cut out 90% of them because I think we need to save some time for the actual interview. Right? And right, advisors, some very hot companies like Ramp, Gorgeous, and e-commerce. Welcome, G. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Hey, Sean. Good to be here. Yeah, I think you said it all. I think, what I do is I've had the chance, I've been very fortunate of being able to be at multiple high growth companies. The most well-known ones were Segment and Drift and maybe upcoming Gorgeous. And I've, learned a lot and done some pretty, let's say, advanced stuff, very competitive, aggressive stuff on the growth marketing side. And we're going to talk about some of that. And nowadays I pattern match. All right, so I'm very focused in the B2B SaaS space. And the problems are all similar. Like they're all pretty much the same, Sean, and so I've built a collection of like over 600 tactical ways to say improve conversion rates at one point in the funnel, fix the marketing mix and things like that. And when I hop into a new client, a new portfolio company, and we're going to talk about the difference between like a client and a portfolio company for me, I can identify an issue and say, hey, like this looks like something I've done before. What if we try those two things which have worked for me? All right. And so very quickly being able to pattern match and try to do the best thing on the market. So, that's what I do.
Totally. So tell us about, so you've shifted from, being VP of growth or, advisor to a lot of these startups to having your own shop. Are you a VC fund? Are you a growth fund? Do you have a thesis? How does that work? I've never came across such an animal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are not a VC fund in the sense that we don't invest money. Okay, so HyperGrowth Partners is a partnership, right? It's a collective of marketing people like myself who have, let's say, the desire to advise and help companies grow faster. Okay, and that help is compensated in the form of equity, and so very much like a VC, we're going to have deal flow, we're going to run due diligence, we're going to have to decide which companies we want to work with, and we're going to have like fund metrics in terms of performance, and we have like it's a pooling system between the partners. Unlike a VC, we don't need to raise money from LPs, and we don't invest, right? We just put our partners' time on the companies in exchange of equity. So we operate very much like a VC, but our product is not money. And the reason for that is it's being a VC is not very competitive. Like your product is, your dollars are as good as the next person's dollars, pretty much, right? Even if you try to bring some differentiation. Whereas, I'm very differentiated. And that brings us back to like what I do as a marketer. As a marketer, I always try to have a differentiated approach to the market. I hate being commoditized. So not a VC, not a consultant, not an agency, really just a collection, a coalition or a grouping of marketing leaders.
Totally. So, I mean, everything you do is about scale. How do you scale hypergrowth?
Well, there are two things actually. Scaling is one. Scarcity is the other. If you can't scale, increase the price.
There we go.
And so here's the thing, like my fund, if you want to think about it like that, right, has a capital limit. What's the capital limit? It's the number of hours I want to inject in my work every year. That's the limit, right? Give or take, I want to put like 2,000 hours a year into work, right? Give or take, full-time job, right? And so for most people, and so I need to allocate that time thoughtfully. Okay, so I don't want to scale that. I have no appetite from working like night and day and weekends. Like that's not what I want. Okay, what
Leave
I
that
want
to founders.
yeah, I want to maximize my my impact, the value I create, so that I can extract value. So value creation and value extraction. All right, and that comes through like scarcity. All right. Some of the scaling comes from actually being multiple people in the partnership, because then we can share some ops resources. We have like an ops team. We have a chief of staff. I have like, people running due diligence for me and stuff like that, right? Absolutely, right? And we bring more, because there's more than one of us, we can bring more value. Just yesterday, it's funny, like for one of our very first deals, ramp.com, I was chatting with Eric, the founder, and Eric told me about a candidate that he was trying to close, and that candidate has actually wrote me on LinkedIn. I was like, cool, I can add some value, but I don't know the person, so maybe I can try and give a nice word. But that person said in LinkedIn that they knew my partner Martin Gontovitas very well. So I reached out to Martin and said, Martin, close the guy. And so, this could be difficult. I know he told me that he was going to say no. This is like, close the guy. And between yesterday, so I'm in France. So yesterday between like 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., Gonto worked the guy and the guy signed at 1 a.m. Okay. And so that is the value of the partnership. That's because I did not know the person, but we are 6 partners. And so we have very, very good reach within, I say, the broader marketing space, right? And we can add value in a way that I myself wouldn't be able to.
Totally. That's incredible. So I'm excited for this big scarcity and some big impact on your end. So you mentioned, differentiation, right? So let's talk a little bit about growth. I mean, it's not marketing, it's not sales. What is it exactly, and why did you earn this title of the crazy marketer?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like you're right, both are related, right? In the sense that it's not marketing and it's not product because of the way that you approach the problem. So if you think of marketing and product, the way that you approach a problem is that you de-risk, okay, whatever you're going to do by talking to customers, researching the market. So you front load a lot of the analysis. And then once you have high confidence, you build the product and you launch it. So it can be somewhat lean, but like it's not that lean, right? Because you're not your MVP takes like, at best, I'd say a couple of weeks or a couple of months, right? Whatever
Sure.
You're launching, right? At best, a couple of months, I'd say. And you're trying to reduce the failure risk every time that you do that. So you're not going to take that many risks, right? Growth is the exact opposite approach, which is you come open-minded, saying like, I don't know if this is going to work, like, but we might as well try and we'll see, right? And so you throw a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks, okay? So why is it better? It's not. It's different. You find different things, okay? It's not better. You got to be humble. It's not better. It's a different approach, okay? So if you throw a lot of things, like why wouldn't product be able to do that? Well, because you need both. Like sometimes you need conviction and you need to be able to invest into a feature or a campaign and you go all in. And sometimes like, wait, like what should be the right strategy on Facebook? What should be the right way to close the landing pages we should have? How should we do outbound? We have 6 ideas about outbound, right? How should we do that? Well, run all 6 and then get the data. Okay, so it's a logic where you fail often, and the learning is you fail fast, and so you cut corners. you cut corners on the code quality, on a lot of things, so the cost of learning goes down, and you can speed up the number of things you can try. And then you figure out if one of them works. Okay, totally. So it is a model that is very close to the VC model. If you think of like the early stage VC model, like, I love VCs and all my friends, but like the success rate is low, to be honest. Like it's like 10%, all right? And shout out to all the entrepreneurs who in their heart know that they're part of the 10% who's going to succeed. I know 100% of entrepreneurs believe they are part of the 10%.
Listen, you only need to try 10 times and then you're guaranteed, right?
That's damn right. And so it's the same approach. Like VCs like will invest in a bunch of different things, and one investment is going to pay back all of the rest and more. It's the same approach. Okay? It's very much the same approach. And so why have I earned the title of being crazy? It's because from the outside, if you look at it, it sure looks a bit crazy. So like, why are they doing all those things? Like that sounds like a bad idea, right? Sounds like a terrible idea. But like in every idea that has some kind of a learning, there's a good learning.
Totally. So there's you definitely earned your crazy scientist title. Let's talk maybe about a concrete idea. So a concrete example. So I know at Drift, for example, at Gorgeous, you came up with your own inventions. You mentioned you have a playbook with 600 different plays there. What's one invention that you came up with and is something you use and deploy with some of your portfolios on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. So I'd say most of the time, like I advise B2B SaaS companies. Most B2B SaaS companies have a combination of a bottom-up approach, okay, and a sales-led motion. Basically, you have some lower value customers who are going to self-serve, and the larger ones you're going to try and like charge more, and so you have salespeople like talking to them. It's very typical. Like almost everybody has that. Okay. Now here's the big mistake, or actually the learning that now we know is a mistake, is generally we offer those people the choice. There's like sign up or book a demo, and so we let the people self-select what they're it's like choose your own adventure. And I'm like, this is nuts. Like I don't want people to be able to choose. I want the large ones to book a demo because they can't succeed in the product by their own. There's just no way. They don't even have, like, if you think of legal and IT compliance, they can't use SaaS platforms without going through all of those, like, hops and loops and whatnot, right? So they have to go through a demo. And the smaller ones, I don't want them on the demo. Like, I can't pay back the cost of my sales reps, right? And so if you think about that makes a lot of sense. It's a branching. But you need to, so how do you do that? And so if you look into, like, for example, one of my friends' website, madkudu.com, MADKUDU, and you enter, try it out. Okay, try out, enter my current email, which is g@growth.li. It's it's just me, right? So I'm not qualified. It's a bad business for them.
Yeah,
and what's going to happen? Yeah, I'm VSB, right? And what's gonna see is you're gonna be sent on the thank you page, which basically says, "Hey, we'll reach out to you later. Here's some good content to read." Okay, which is disqualification. Enter my old email address. Enter Guillaume@segments.com. Okay, what's gonna happen is that there's a takeover of the page, which is, "Hey, Guillaume, you qualify for the VIP experience. Let's talk right now."
I think you'll even get a platter of cupcakes within 5 minutes. Or maybe actually, speaking of this, tell us a little bit about your cup of coffee experiment. That was segment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly the same idea. Once we discovered that we could push people down the path we want, then, and it works, and you get more demos. The question is like, what is the best experience I can provide to the top value leads? Okay, so if you start understanding that there's a spectrum of value from low to high, then you realize you should not create the same experience for everybody. And so sure, like cutting into like having like, oh, well, low value goes to like content and high value goes to like a Calendly or Chili Piper. Okay, but then like, is that anything better than that? Well, we tried. A bit better is saying, hey, like, let's just pop up the Drift chat and let's try to have them talk to us. It's a bit better. It's marginally better. But like, we're still the ones asking something. We're not giving, right? We're asking. It doesn't feel right. And so I figured out, well, if we know they have value, what can we do to keep them on the site right now so we can do a demo right now? Like, why book a demo for later? And so we tried. We said, hey, like, actually, hey, Sean, like, do you want a demo right now? We have somebody who could give you a demo right now. And that kind of works, right? Some people say yes, and they close really well. Not enough people say yes. They kind of like put off. And what we landed on after many tries was this. You come to the site, and we detect your IP, and we know you're from a large company, or you enter your email, and we detect from your large company. Both work. It pops up a Drift chat, which says, hey, how do you like your coffee? Which is a weird question to ask to somebody who's coming to like a B2B website, right? It's like, it feels off. And so people are like, what? And so they click. I'm a marketer. If somebody clicks on something that intrigues them, I win. I've already won. And now you're just like going down the funnel I've created for you. And so the bot asks like, do you want coffee or tea? Do you want sugar? And eventually people order something like a cappuccino. Because we know the company, we know the HQ address. Remember, that's like pre-COVID stuff. So people are working at offices, right? And so we just confirm, say, hey, Sean, cool. We'll deliver a latte, at 2443 Market Street on San Francisco. And people are like, wait, coffee is actually coming? Like, yeah, coffee's coming. And then while the coffee actual order was being built, we allocated the chat to an SDR, all right? And the AE. And the SDR says, hey, Sean, I saw that, you had fun with the bot. You were qualified. Super happy for you. By the way, like, it's going to take, 15 minutes for like Postmates to deliver the coffee. Like, do you want me to do a very quick 15-minute demo while you're waiting for the coffee? And now that's hard to say no to, right? Because like, you're like, hey, well, you just spent 5 minutes fooling around with my bot. So you're not in a rush. That's one. Second, reciprocity. I just gave you something, all right? And you're playing on one of my sites, like it's really, really hard to say no. And so the conversion rate on that one is insane.
Right. Wow. That's incredible. Now, let me ask you this, you spoke about this spectrum, between, very high value leads and lower. How, if I'm a small, startup and building something for B2B, how do you deal with that paradox early on when you don't have so many resources? Any ideas around that?
Yeah, I mean, from a product standpoint, yeah, man. Focus
or growth.
Like, pick. Pick. At the beginning, try to pick. You can't do everything. Like, you got to build a good product and good marketing. Like, eventually, you'll cover both. But like, it's just easier. Most startups like create traction at the lower end, and eventually migrate to the high and sweet ACVs of the enterprise market. That's like the typical approach. The reverse approach is much harder. I know a couple of companies that are like super like enterprise Fortune 5000 focus on like, and call me and say, hey G, like we want your help because we want to open like a PLG motion. And I'm like, guys, it's more than the motion, it's the product that needs to be PLG. It's just like the entire, it's not just like putting a sign up and pay here. All right, it's like the entire thing needs to be self-serve. Right. So it's generally easier to like slowly build in the enterprise features than to strip them away from the product. Right,
totally. So I think you started with an official growth role in like 2014 or 15 with Mention. Like we're like 7 years later. What's changed? And I think we both have some white hairs. Yeah, me for sure.
Ouch, you just killed me, man. Yeah, okay.
So has anything changed in the sense of, how we cook up some thoughts about growth and about product, in 2021 versus 2015?
Yeah. So I think what's changed is that the data-driven approach has now become like commonplace, right? You got to remember, like back then, like the segment was nowhere. Kissmetrics was like not widely adopted, and like most startups had Google Analytics, and that's kind of it, right? And there was no connection between like your marketing and your sales data, and so marketers were just like creating a bunch of signups and leads, and salespeople were just like wrangling it however they could like after that. Most companies now have like a unified approach and understanding that a good data culture is a requirement. They might not have it yet, but it's widely understood. Okay. What most companies don't have yet is a good experimentation approach. So they're still too slow on how to experiment. Okay. And that's going to change soon. But I think that's the next frontier for sure. There's a lot more talent. Still very few people who have a very broad understanding of marketing. We have too many, especially in Europe, we have too many specialists, like somebody who's great at SEO and somebody who's great at paid, and not enough people who are like understand like all channels and can connect all of the channels together. And that is key to success, especially at the early stage.
Right. So you're thinking people like black belts who can just do a lot.
Well, I would give that a pause. I don't think you need to be the best person in every channel. I definitely am no longer the best person in every channel, but I know every channel pretty well, and I can hire freelancers. But more importantly, I can connect the different channels together. I'll give you an example. I think it's worth having an example here. Okay, most startups do some form of paid marketing on Google, okay, on Google AdWords.
Sure.
And most people have, it's almost, it's 15 years since AdWords launched, something like that, give or take. Yep. So everyone knows now that you need to create like ad groups, would be them like very granular, and target some small number of keywords on each ad group and have lots of landing pages that are very relevant to each messaging in each keyword, okay? And we all do that well. And we push people with a very specific ask to a very specific landing page, and they give us their email. And what happens next when they jump into the product and they get the onboarding? We forget all of what we learned, all of what we paid for, and we say, hey, Sean, this is the product, and welcome to our world. They're like, wait, but like, I was interested in that feature, right? I'm like, no, forget all of what you saw before. This is now the product. And so there's kind of like this compression of the experience as you move downwards the funnel. Or like you just ignore all of what you paid for. And that is because of lack of data integration and lack of cross, let's say, channel experiences. I like to speak in food terms, all right? Very French of me. But let's use like Italian food here. Most organizations are siloed like cannelloni. See what a cannelloni is, right? It's like this round pasta. It sits aside another round pasta. And so like, it's like you've got like, it's completely siloed. I like the lasagna approach, which is one specific audience comes in with a specific need, and we will try and maintain that experience throughout the funnel until the end. Okay, so for example, if you take like Chartloop, I'm sure you have like multiple use cases, salespeople, but maybe like recruiters or like other things, right? Totally. Let's just say that like I'm just making it up here. Let's say salespeople and recruiters, okay? And I imagine you might have some ads running for salespeople and other for recruiters. Like, but let's imagine now that sales is your top use case. Let's imagine you've baked sales everywhere into the onboarding and in the welcome emails. How's the recruiter going to feel? Like, wait, this is not the right product for me. Like, this is not what I want, right? And that's what most companies do. It works from a role perspective. It works from a company size perspective. It works from a willingness to pay perspective. Okay, so there's different dimensions there, right? Where if you have like if you're running some ads on like free versus like premium, if you're running things for VSB versus enterprise, the logic is the same. You got to keep the coherence from the top to the bottom.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, amen to having more lasagna style products. But totally, I mean, with Chartloop too. I mean, we're very early in our game, but yeah, I mean, the top of funnel is very, as you mentioned, you know, targeted. But then like once you're in the product, it's the same old thing for everybody. So like, you know, we were kind of losing the magic touch that brought the use case or the interest that brought the initial user.
Absolutely.
Cool. So we are now, so I'm sitting in Israel, and here we're actually starting to come out of COVID a little bit. This week we took off our masks. Hopefully you guys will follow shortly. I know France a little, but you know.
You just like hitting, like, I have gray hair and I'm like in lockdown at home with my kids at home, like just hitting on me, Shauna.
Anything else I can rub in?
Yes, Bitcoin is at all-time high, and most of my Bitcoin was lost with Mt. Gox like 5 years ago. So, just,
oh wow, okay, I didn't know that.
Go for it. Yes, yeah.
Anyways, I hope your Ethereum is a little better, but yeah, so I remember, you know, clearly, you know, exactly a year ago, March 2020, everybody was like, oh my God, you know, the world is coming to an end. Especially if you were with long sales cycles, what do we do with our marketing budget? I remember your webinar, you know, speaking about some of the strategies that Gorgeous was implementing, really thinking long-term. Has, you know, what's happened there to some of your portfolios, and like the playbooks that you put in place to actually deal with a crisis. First of all, what were they? And is there anything, are you like planning like more agility in the long term, like to prepare for the next hit or the next hopefully not another COVID, in terms of growth and marketing?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. So, I mean, by nature, growth is very agile, and we see opportunities everywhere. And we try to like figure out like what are the moving trends. And it's like, you know, like I'm not going to go back to what we said last year, but you know, like all the budgets shifted to online. You know, webinars became saturated, and it just goes back to differentiation. You know, if everybody's coming to your playing field, what are you going to do? All right. If CACs are increasing, what are you going to do? And so every time, here's how I think about it. Most of the companies I work with operate in a competitive landscape, right? They have a product.
Sure.
I hope it's better, but like really, like there's other products that are like pretty damn good in the same market. Okay, so compete with a bunch of other companies, and they're facing the same issues as we are in times of crisis like this. Absolutely the same issues. So it's stressing the organization. How can I leverage that to my advantage? Right? How can I put even more pressure on the organization? And so, I mean, one example of last year is that I was at Gorgeous, the help desk for e-commerce. And so it might not be obvious nowadays, but like in February and March, e-commerce sales plummeted hard, right? And like there's a big pullback there. And eventually it came back like crazy, as we know. But that time when it plummeted, what we did is cool, like we have a strong cash position. And we know that our competitors don't. And so we went out with an offer that was like, hey, e-commerce merchants, we'll just like discount our price by whatever your revenue drop is. And we made ads, reach out to the community and say, hey, your revenue drops by 60%, we'll cut the price by 60% for you. Just give us a screenshot of your Shopify dashboard. Drove insane number of signups. More importantly, created immense love and recognition within the community. People say, hey, we were the first to move. We're the first moves. And the competitors are like, damn, like that's aggressive. Like that's, and like it's hard to react to exactly the same thing, right? And so we just started like pulling customers from everywhere, right? And you know what's amazing? Because e-commerce like bounced back, they all stick with us and they're all paying like full price now, which is amazing, right? So how can you use the stress that you don't control, that's in the market, to put the pressure on your competitors?
Totally. So that's clever, and that really shows, like, I mean, you know, products are not that much different. As you mentioned, there's competitors, and it's really like, how do you bring them? And then once you bring them, really customize the experience.
Yeah. Man, if you look at Drift, I worked at Drift. We can do Intercom. Like, of course, I believe Drift is so much better, but like, reality, like, is it that different? I mean, it's a chat with a bot that sits on the homepage that, you know, like, creates a conversation. Like, the differences are not like huge, right? And Drift is smaller and started later, so there's no reason why Drift should have been able to succeed, but it sure did. And it did because we found everywhere on the acquisition side where Intercom was not playing, where they were not performing, and we just went hard there and we made it work. Okay, so we stressed their entire team. One example of that was fun on the product side. Drift got into a habit in 2017, 2018 of launching one new product feature a month. And we launched it on Product Hunt, and we launched it as if we were launching a whole new product, right? And every second Tuesday of the month, we'd launch something, okay?
Wow.
What happened, and there was more marketing than there was substance of product, for what it's worth. But what happened is that Intercom started spending the last half of each month reacting to whatever we did and answering the customers' questions about whether they did that feature too. And so they were wasting half of their month just playing catch up. And the first half just being stressed at whatever we were going to launch. So we completely disrupted their ability to think normally.
Nice. That's brilliant. Let me ask you this. So switching a little bit, I think product-led growth, or PLG, as some of us call it, is really top of mind for everybody, and especially more and more so into B2B. Now, when you're working with some of your portfolios or talking to any startup, like, where does this start? Is this like how we do our outbound or our ads, or does the CEO have to be committed in their heart that this is, you know, product up? How do you see that?
Yeah, so, I mean, most of the businesses I've been at are not true PLGs. They're not. Like, product-led growth means that the product grows on its own. It's virality, okay? And so, like, it's not just self-serve, right? It's like, think about like more like Calendly, right? The product has inherent virality because people experience it. And so then there's this virality component that helps the product grow, okay? Sometimes you might even have a network effect where the more people use it, the better the value of the product, right? If you look at...
Very rare.
Very rare in B2B, very rare. Okay, Drift has some virality because people see the chat, and sure, Segment has none. Like, you don't have random people looking at the source code of a web page and say, "Ooh, the segment there, what's that thing? That's interesting," right? Just never happens, okay? And none of those have network effects, okay? So they're not true PLGs, okay? However, there is one aspect of PLG that's important for everyone and that I apply every day, which is, why is PLG successful? Because the acquisition takes care of itself in the sense that it is free and it grows. And it's hard to compete with that. Like, something that every month is going to grow on its own and is not going to cost you a cent. Like, if you compete with somebody who's PLG and you're paying, you're a dead fish in the water, okay? So think about that. How can you replicate some of those things? Well, outbound is mostly free. Mostly, okay?
Outbound sales? Like
outbound emails.
You know, yeah, but I mean, you're owning reps and data and tools.
Why would you have reps?
I mean, who's speaking? Who's closing those customers?
Closing is something else. But at least doing all the lead gen, getting the demos booked. Okay.
Sure.
And you can definitely do outbound for self-serve. So you might not have virality, but you can, my job as a growth person, that's what I want to get to, is to create low CAC or free CAC acquisition strategies. And this is the big difference between growth and marketing, to close the loop on your very first question, which is marketing generally has campaigns where CAC increases with scale. Okay, if you do AdWords, you do Facebook, you go for the low-hanging fruit audiences first, and then you go to the next one, and each extension is a bit less performing, and the CAC goes up a bit, right? So like your CAC is like a curve, and eventually CAC kills you. On my side, what I do is I create experiences, products for acquisition, where the CAC decreases with scale because my product, the cost is front-loaded. Give you an example. Drift, as we said, live chat, the growth team built a product which was called Get My Response Time. The job of that product, okay, was to measure the response time of sales team from companies we wanted to sell to. Okay, and it's a complicated process that basically creates demo requests from a qualified company with a unique email inbox and monitors the time of response, right? And would shoot the email with the learning to the VP of sales. Say, hey, Sean, your team took like 8 hours and 25 minutes to respond to our qualified demo request. That's not great. You should bring that under 4 hours. And if you did, you'd like plus 20% the demo rate. And eventually that leads to like, well, how fast should we be? And then like live chat at the end, right? That product has a cost to be built and maintained. Sure, mostly to be built, okay? But if like 10 people go through it or 1,000 people go through it, the costs are mostly the same. So I have diminishing CAC with scale. Okay,
right.
That is a typical growth approach. It scales extremely well, and my costs mostly disappear. Okay, which is not, I'd say, what content does. If you think of content, this is fairly linear. Like unless like you can say, hey, if I invest more in quality, I have let's say a sub, so you're an over linear curve of response, which is rarely the case. Content marketing is very linear. Like you do one piece of content, you have that many leads, you do 10, you get 10 times, all right, more or less, all right?
Totally, that's brilliant. That's actually a big thing that we have actually built into Chartloop, and we're definitely doubling down on scaling that, because as you say, the product investment is a one-off, and one user or 1,000 users, the same thing. This was definitely a very fascinating space to watch, product led and the application to growth. To wrap up, maybe I know you see probably hundreds of different tools. Any exciting tool you came across in the last few months of 2021?
Clay.run is really cool. CLAY.run. It's all in the no-code space, but doing some really good stuff on like the enrichment and like prospection space. So I like it. I look at it a lot. Yeah, that's probably the one I'm going to name.
Nice. Are they portfolio or anything exciting coming from them? You can. Let's move on to the next question.
If you're on B2B SaaS, you're giving me a few cents every day. And my portfolio is so large and broad in the B2B SaaS space that everybody's paying me something. Like to avoid all of my tools would be quite a feat. Right? I've got like 35 portfolio companies that span the spectrum from like data enrichment to like live chats to like data infrastructure to like, oh, you name it, right? So
basically, if I open my computer, there's G royalties going out there. Don't ask how, but there's
absolutely it's small, but there's a royalty going out, which is something I love.
But it's all about the scale. Love it. No, that's really great. So I definitely look up to you in terms of some of your growth strategies and your leadership in the States. Who do you look up to for who you think is doing some really interesting things in terms of growth in B2B specifically?
Yeah. So I try to expand my horizon beyond the things I already know, right? And so when I think of like who do I look up to, it's like people who can teach me things that I don't know. So more the traditional marketing side, and also because growth is great from like 1 million to 50 million in revenue annual, but beyond that, you really need traditional marketing, right? Once you've touched everybody in your market, and the people who have said yes, and the people who have said no are like, yeah, oh, I said no. Like, how do you convince those people that they were wrong? That requires something that's not growth. So the people I look up to who are really good at some of that, I'm going to think are like Udi, who's the CMO of Gong.
Absolutely.
He's like it's a great product, it's a great brand, but he's amazing, right? He's amazing. Megan, who's a CMO of TripActions. Gotta give credit to her being able to like ride the COVID wave at TripActions and ride it well. Like that was tough. So I think those two people are like definitely people I look up to, and that I try to get them on a call a few times a year, so that I can like catch up and know like how do they succeed.
Love it. Those two, yeah, definitely very, very inspiring. And I mean, where can people find you to get some more of your insight and learn from your journey?
Yeah, I post quite a bit on LinkedIn. So just find me on LinkedIn.
I'm going to link this all. Yeah.
Yep. Otherwise, if you're curious about what I'm doing at HyperGrowth Partners, you can just type hypergrowth.vc in your browser. That's going to bring you to a Notion page. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Incredible. Well, Guillaume, I have a lot of homework to, I have probably a few months worth of work here. But thank you for joining us. We learned a ton and we can't wait to catch up with you soon.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.